Ensure you spray the body really well anywhere where you're going to be putting on tape. So you want to put it up or over the shoulder, down underneath the arm, up the front of the chest, around the whole chest, and around the upper arm. The important thing then when you start adding anchors is that you put on your anchors loose. I'm using kinesio tape because it, believe it or not, is the one that sticks the best, but yet it all comes off the easiest whenever it comes to taking it off again. And with these anterior dislocations, we end up having to redo them for every training session, so the tape is on and off all the time. So that's an initial anchor. So we've got one on this back, and I want to finish that one up on the other anchor so that your anchor is attached to an anchor. Then we put an anchor on his arm, so we have somewhere to attach the tape to on the arm. And I'll usually string the one from the arm up across the chest as well. Now, in this case, I've used Fix-A-Mul, but in later times I've actually changed that because the Fix-A-Mul is the hardest bit to get off. So we used to use this, and now we have moved on to using kinesio tape around the arm as well. And when we use the kinesio tape around the arm for our anchor, we can then bring it on up, as I'm going to bring it up here now. You'll see, so this can be, okay, that's just another anchor there. So all of these anchors are going on lightly. I've also stopped using that anchor as much, as I don't need it down the back as much as I used to think I needed it down the back. I'm now using the kinesio tape over the Fix-A-Mul anchor, which I don't do anymore. I usually use the kinesio as my anchor. But if you notice, when I came up the front there, I did put tension on the front of that kinesio strip, because all of these strips around the front I wanted to be really tight, because that's obviously where the damage is done. So I do a few variations of here, taking the tape in various different directions. I try and go like have them crossing over each other as well, so he takes a deep breath in at that point as well, so that the ribs can move. See the way that's a vulnerable area when the arm is up like that, so I'm putting the tape tight across the front there, and I'm always anchoring back onto the initial anchors that I put on the body, so the tape always is going to stick to something. Again, I have the arm out at 90 degrees abduction and a vulnerable area, so we're just trying to make sure that the tape is taut across the anterior shoulder in the vulnerable positions. And when I'm applying the tape, I'm always just checking how it feels as well, and asking him how it feels. So this one I have brought up at the front, down around the back of the arm, and now I'm bringing it back in around the front again. So it's like a figure of 8 there that's crossing over the anterior shoulder and putting a lot of pressure across the anterior shoulder there. So you can see there the way the tape is anchored onto the anchor at the back. So now I have a few layers of the stretchy kinesio tape on, and I'm putting some layers of leuko tape, which are non-stretchy, to reinforce the whole thing. So the initial layers of tape are allowing some stretching of the body and stuff like that, but these now are coming on very rigid. So I make him take a deep breath in when I'm coming up over the ribs there, so that he can still breathe deeply even with this tape. I'm anchoring it very low down because I want to get a really strong pull on it. I'm going right across the front of the joint, so again where he is most vulnerable. Again, repeating it with the arm out in the most vulnerable positions. See, when I'm putting this on, that I'm padding the tape down as I go, making sure there's really good contact, and I'm making it very strong. You can see the pull I'm putting on it there. It's almost like an X, creating X's in front of the shoulder where it is most likely to sublux. The reason for coming down in underneath here is that if it's a downward subluxation, by putting the tape up good and high up into the axilla, I'm trying to prevent any downward displacement as well. So a few more of these leukotape strips. You can see it with this taping, you really don't want to be doing it in a rush. You want to have plenty of time. There's an awful lot to it. And test it as I go. Make sure that he feels comfortable with it. He wants to be able to still move the arm, but at the same time, we want to make sure it doesn't pop out. Now these last few strips of tape here are really stopping him from getting end range elevation. Some players mightn't be overly happy with that, but you have to do that in order to stop it from popping out, because it's not going to like keep his shoulder in the socket if he's able to, you know, hyperextend it. So you can see there I have it limited now, so it's just preventing the very last little bit of like abduction elevation kind of. It's just a small bit limited. Now we're starting to do the top anchors, so just use a different colour here so you can see it. So the top anchors aren't pulled really tight, they're a little bit looser. I'm making sure that the ends of the tape now, as well as that, trying to keep as much of the tape continuous as I can, because then you don't have any ends to pull off. So the fact that I start at the front, came round the back, doing a figure of 8 up, I'm going to go down around the back and right around his body, because otherwise once he starts to sweat and run around in a match situation, the tape is going to start pulling off. So I'm inclined to use the tape to top anchor the whole lot. This one's going to come up around the front then. On a match day, I would always try to use brown tape if possible, but now that one I probably should have taken that one on up around the front there, going the top anchor. Now in this instance, the player came back after it was finished the tape, and he wasn't quite happy that it wasn't quite secure enough, so he came back and looked for a little bit more. I also wasn't quite happy with the fact that I hadn't secured the anchor in the front, so I was happy to put another strip or two on and finish it off by lapping up the anchor at the front. So again, just putting extra pressure on there. So we just did another X of it. Give it a little bit of extra pressure. Again, you do need to be careful of his deltoid, that you're not affecting the use of the deltoid, but he has never complained or never had a problem with that. So you can see how much force I put on it all the time as well. There's a lot of force put on the tape, on the actual taping. And now this is where I'm going to do the figure of 8 again now, and do a top anchor up the front as well to ensure that it all stays in place. Following the same line of the last anchor, and now I'm going to come up across the front to make sure that that one stays secure there as well. He just didn't feel it was going to hold him, so that was why we put that extra piece on. And always for a match day, it's better to have it crossed down like that, because they will sweat a lot, and despite the fact that we've used a lot of spray, it's still hard enough to get it to stay on. But with a taping like this, he played an entire season until he was able to go and get his surgery. He had a tape like that for every contact training and every match that we played. Took a long time, but we got him through the season, so it is worth doing.